Diane Diachishin has been a member of this congregation for at least 30 years. Her father was a joy and a fascinating man, a scientist. And I remember him fondly. And it's lovely to see that Diane has taken the cloth, has become our resident minister. We need her badly.
Thank you, Mike.
Let's listen today as she tells us more about Rumi.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning. Can everybody hear me okay? This is our new sound system. I love it. I didn't coordinate with the flowers this morning, my outfit. But as Rose said, you look very colorful this morning. I feel colorful. Thank you. So this is about how Rumi really became one of our best-selling poets. I learned a lot about Rumi, which I didn't know, so I really enjoyed putting this sermon together. According to Leslie Wines, who's a journalist with a background in Eastern religion and meditation, the 13th century mystic and poet Rumi has always been revered for his excellence as a poet, and as she wrote, his rare ability to empathize with humans and animals and plants. I don't know why she put the plants in there, but she did. But above all, for his flawless moral center. And she attributed his nomadic quality of his early life between the ages of 5 to 22 years, which really enabled him to cultivate a rich inner life as a defense of what was going on at that time, a volatile and a very heartless world as well as what we're living in now. It also gave him a broad-minded perspective that shines like a beacon through his poetry, and it's certainly one of the reasons why Rumi is just so widely read in 7 centuries after his death. A lot of the research talks about when he changed from being a theologian, a spiritual leader, to a poet. And part of it was his friendship with a man by the name of Shams. And he was tragically killed. And that was a real turning point in his life when he got deeper into his poetry and a way to express his despair. He also had 2 other really close friends, 3, that he counted as his dearest friends throughout his lifetime. And he called them the sun, the moon, and the stars. And according to research, he was mourned when he died by people of all backgrounds, all religions, Muslims, Christians, Jewish people. And according to scholars, his cat was buried with him. And his cat stopped eating the day he passed and never got over his death. So as a preacher, he was very popular, and they call him mesmerizing. He himself likened writing his sermons to sticking his hand in tripe, which reminds me of myself. I looked up tripe. I didn't know it was the stomach of a cow. It's not that, but it is challenging. He was a very poor man. He was a very shy man, and they said he would hide when people came to his door. He prayed 5 times a day to Mecca. And according to the New York Times, Rumi is really one of our best-selling poets in the United States. He wrote about love, he wrote about passion, he wrote about ecstasy, and he wrote not only poetry, but he also is famous for these quotes, which I'll get to later, as well as his amazing sermons. You can see his influence today everywhere. Deepak Chopra often quotes Rumi. Madonna quotes him. A lot of composers have used his words. In fact, they used his words for a catwalk recently in a fashion show. Last night, I was watching Haystack News, which is like the free news that you can get on Roku, and I backtracked it because I heard Rumi was mentioned along with Harry and Meghan. And I was thinking, what would they have to do with Rumi? They just formed a new media company called the Three Gate Strategies, and that was based on what Rumi had said. Before you speak, let your words pass through three gates. The first, is it true? Is it really necessary? And is it kind? In California, where they have retreats for Esalen, people have been studying Rumi for years at workshops, and they always, according to the New York Times, start their workshops in tribute to Rumi and his words. So according to religious scholars, few religious figures in the history of civilization have successfully crossed the borders of faith, of language, and geography as nimbly as Rumi, the great 13th century theologian and mystic poet. And as I mentioned before, he left behind a vast amount of lyric poetry, metaphysical writings, lectures, letters, which have influenced us for centuries. And he also inspired the whirling dervishes, which I'll talk about a little bit later, which are a little strange to me, but you never know. So I took a few of his poems and a few of his quotes, and I kind of aligned them with our own Unitarian principles, and there's so much similarity. The Guest House, which Mike so eloquently read. And mind you, the titles of these poems have been made up for years. Usually they choose like the theme of the poem or maybe the first line. So The Guest House, and I first heard this poem on Star Island, and it resonated with me. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. Whether it's a joy, a depression, a meanness. And he wrote, welcome everything and entertain them all and treat each of these guests honorably. Even your dark thoughts, even your shame, even your malice. Meet them at the door, laughing, and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. The guest house reminds us that life is constantly changing. We can't stop it at all by trying to resist it, and welcome everything every day. The second poem is about love. And he wrote so many poems about love, and I've heard his words recited at weddings. He talked about agape love. He talked about passionate love. He talked about eros love. And he wrote a little poem, The Great Love Inside Me. And the poem goes like this. I am so small, I can barely be seen. How can this great love be inside me? Look at your eyes. They are really small, but they see enormous things. And what he was referring to is that love, whether this kind or that kind, divine, spiritual, human to human love, as he wrote, ultimately leads you to the same thing. There's no real boundary between the types of love. It's the same thing. It's always the same human experience. He also wrote about being present. And he said, and this is one of his quotes, "I think energy can't go in all directions completely uncontrolled. You have to choose every day because we have one life and you need to spend it wisely. Don't use yourself for things that are not worthwhile." And that's sort of the same idea in Sufi thought. And it's also heard a lot in Buddhism, that our mind just jumps from one thing to another, our monkey mind. And as the Sufis, they call it rushing of ideas into our minds. Monkey mind. Finding joy. This was a big, big part of his life, and I love this part as well. He loved music, and he loved dancing as well. And he wrote, "We must live in the kingdom of joy." And he wrote, "Today, like every other day, we can wake up empty and we can wake up frightened. So don't open the door to the study and begin reading. Take down an instrument. Let the beauty we love be what we do. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground." Another big, big part of his life was the whirling dervishes, which is the dancing. He wrote a poem called "The Secret Turning." A secret turning in us makes the universe turn. Head unaware of your feet, and feet unaware of your head. Kind of sounds like me when I'm dancing. Neither cares. They keep turning. So the whirling dervishes. A dervish is a Sufi man, and whirling dervishes are dances where people twirl around. Is everybody familiar with the whirling dervishes? Okay, good. So that was so much a part of his spiritual life. And he said that whirling is one way to stay centered while moving. And I don't even like contra dancing, so I can't imagine dancing for hours. And the scholar Kasharvitz wrote a wonderful, wonderful essay about her in On Being, a spiritual online journal that I love. Oh, my words are up there. I wonder what. I figured it out, though. And she said, well, I think you could say that Rumi thought everything in the universe is whirling. It's quickened, and it's quickened with the force of love. I mean, that fits with the Sufi theology. We are like planets. Your phone is attempting to whirl. Are you okay? We are like planets. We have to appreciate that. And in order to appreciate that, you have to join the dance. And last year, the New York Times covered the whirling dervishes. They went to the Turkish city of Konya. And every year they get together and they have a week-long series of events and ceremonies, always marking the death of our wonderful Islamic poet, scholar, and Sufi mystic, Rumi. So if you look at the whirling dervishes, you can see one hand is pointed towards the sky, and the other hand is pointed, towards the earth. And that's usually interpreted as bringing the heaven and the earth together and staying connected between the two. And usually before they start the dancing, which goes on for days, they recite prayers and verses. And is this echoing too much? Sorry. So the dervishes are usually dressed in white robes and black cloaks. And as they dance, the black cloak is removed and thrown to the ground, and then they're left in these beautiful white robes, and they begin twirling around and around. And they usually have some music and a lot of chanting. And I thought it was really interesting that in 2006, UNESCO, which is the United Nations cultural body, they proclaimed the dervishes' ritual was a masterpiece of oral and intangible heritage of humanity which needs to be kept alive. And there are many places, there are many Sufi communities. I know there's one in Western Massachusetts. In fact, they even have a school there. And it used to be that only the men could be a whirling dervish, but now women can join the dances too. So if anybody wants to join, feel free. Not me. The last theme is called Finding Your Own Way. Unfold Your Own Myth, which was also written by Rumi. And that is so aligned with our Unitarian principles of a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And he wrote, "Who gets up early to discover the moment light begins? Who finds us here circling, bewildered like atoms? Who comes to a spring thirsty and sees the moon reflected in it? Don't be satisfied with other people's stories, how things have gone with other people. Unfold your own myth without complicated explanation, so everyone will understand your passage. We have opened you, so start walking. Your legs will get heavy, your legs will get tired, but then will come a moment, the feeling that your wings have grown and you will be lifted." So when you look at Rumi, I wonder, how can we, so many centuries later, be inspired by this wonderful mystical poet? One thing is that he was very fond of taking retreats as well as pilgrimages. He did this hundreds of times throughout his life. And as he wrote, it's so important to identify and honor our own individual journey. So I'm going to close with another poem which was written by Rumi, which was inspired by one of his many hundreds of retreats. The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you, so don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across your doorway, where the two worlds will always touch, but the door is round and always open. Don't go back to sleep. So may we all be inspired by Rumi and cultivate a rich inner life as a defense against our volatile and seemingly heartless world. Amen and blessed be. And now we can have feedback or questions. Do you want to lead it, Mike, or?